Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting of the Assembly Committee on Growth and Infrastructure. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Brown May. Assemblyman Carter.
Present.
Assemblywoman Dickman. Assemblywoman Gallant. Assemblyman Gurr. Assemblywoman Kasama. Assemblywoman Marzola. Assemblywoman Miller. Assemblyman Miller. Assemblywoman Peters. Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Chair Watts.
And I am here. Thank you, everybody. It's good to have you here. In honor of Pi Day, we will do our best to keep this meeting rolling. A few housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any electronic devices, please be sure to silence those. If you're going to provide any testimony today, please sign at the table by the door and provide a business card to the committee secretary. Anyone who's joining us remotely, please be sure to mute yourself when you're not speaking and minimize background noise. When testifying, please turn on your microphone and clearly state and spell your name, provide your affiliation, if any, and then turn off the record when you're finished speaking. Anyone wishing to provide testimony or public comment today via phone can find the information to do so on our agendas, which are posted publicly on the legislature's website. Let's see. And committee members will be using laptops to view handouts and other documents. Please don't view this as a sign of disrespect or inattention. Members, today we will have one bill hearing and we will have a work session. We're going to, let's see here. I think we will probably start with our bill hearing and then we'll go into our work session. But first, we do have a BDR introduction to consider. We have BDR 58-113, which revises provisions relating to the towing of a motor vehicle under certain circumstances. As a reminder, a vote to introduce a bill does not imply any support for the bill moving forward. It just allows the BDR to be introduced, assigned a bill number, and potentially move forward through the legislative process. So with that, I would entertain a motion to introduce BDR 58-113.
So moved.
I have a motion from Vice Chair Brown May, a second from Assemblyman Miller. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Thank you. With that, we will go ahead and move on to our bill hearing for the day for Assembly Bill 262, and I will pass the gavel over to my vice chair.
Thank you, Chair Watts. I will now open the bill hearing for Assembly Bill 262, which revises provisions relating to state-owned vehicles. When you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Assemblyman Howard Watts, representing District 15 in the heart of Clark County. I think it's been at least 12 hours since I was sitting in this seat for some of my colleagues who also serve on natural resources. So it did get cold, but I'm back now to present Assembly Bill 262 for your consideration. Really, what AB 262 seeks to do is encourage our state to lead by example in reducing tailpipe emissions and transitioning to a zero emissions fleet. You know, our state has set goals to reduce carbon pollution, Additionally, we're under requirements from the Clean Air Act to reduce unhealthy air pollution in our communities, something that has at times been a serious issue for both Clark and Washoe counties. Unfortunately, they have often been ranked poorly for air pollution. And one of the major contributors to both of those things is transportation. It is the largest source of carbon pollution in our state. In addition, it is one of the biggest sources of particulate matter and a contributor to the formation of smog, all of which have significant negative health impacts, asthma, lung disease, even cognitive impairment and other issues. And so, this body has passed a variety of policies to try and support the development of zero emissions vehicle infrastructure, from charging, fueling, and other policies. And I think it's important that we try and have the state also lead by example in taking on this transition. So simply what this bill does is it amends some of our procurement standards for state vehicles. Walking you through the bill quickly, Section 1 adds to some of our automobile procurement policies that, to the extent practicable, will give preference to the purchase of automobiles which minimize emissions from the automobile and the total costs of the automobile over its service life, which may include without limitation fueling costs, maintenance costs, and any rebates or financial incentives offered for the purchase of the automobile. As we know, with the passage of some of the federal legislation, including the Inflation Reduction Act, for the first time, governments can actually take advantage of what were tax credits. Governments don't file tax returns, but now there's what's called a direct pay provision that allows local governments to take advantage of some of these incentives, lowering the upfront purchase cost of a vehicle. In addition, the fuel and maintenance costs for many zero-emission vehicles, particularly electric battery-powered vehicles, are about half those of internal combustion engines. So sometimes putting in a little bit of an additional investment on the front end is going to yield significant savings over the lifetime of a vehicle, which for most of these passenger vehicles is going to be 10 years or 100,000 miles, which is the standard state policy. And again, so doing that life cycle analysis helps us figure out what's going to be in the best financial interest of the state for the long term, not just at the point where the purchase is being made. And we'll factor in some of these new rebate and incentive programs, as well as the fueling costs, which would include charging costs related to these vehicles. And where all else is equal, we would choose whatever is going to have the greatest reduction of tailpipe emissions from those vehicles. The next section, so this is section 1, sub 4B, emphasizes that to the extent practicable, we purchase motor vehicle fuel that's blended with ethanol, or including or biodiesel. So again, trying to look at reducing the carbon intensity and the emissions of those fuels when it's available, when it's affordable. Sub C specifies that if we're purchasing a new diesel vehicle, that we want to ensure it's capable of using what's known as B20, a biodiesel blend that is 20%, or a diesel blend that's at least 20% biodiesel. And then sub 5 asks that basically we keep record of the type of fuel used by our vehicle fleet so we can understand what that makeup and mix is and how the makeup of our vehicle fleet may be shifting over time. One of the things that I will note, and I'll be submitting a follow-up amendment, is that we list a range of fuel types, but did not include CNG in that, and we'll add that in, although it's not a an exhaustive list. I do want to make sure that that's added. And then Section 2 also has some language related to tracking the fuel types of our state fleet. In addition, I do have a proposed conceptual amendment. Really what this does is add in a legislative declaration that provides some additional context about the importance of this issue, including the contributions of vehicles to our air pollution, the importance of moving away from volatile out-of-state fossil fuel prices to improve our energy security. Crucially, it also sets goals for our state to aspire to reach zero tailpipe emissions from our light-duty vehicles. So again, think of that as essentially the passenger vehicles that we all use to get around by the year 2040, and then for our heavier duty vehicles to get to zero tailpipe emissions by the year 2050. Ultimately, that provides, I think, some guidance about where we want to go. The rest of the bill points us in a path to get there, again, by making decisions that are economically smart, but prioritize reducing pollution when all else is equal. For the vehicles that we already have that use fossil fuels, trying to make those as clean as possible during our transition to vehicles with low and eventually no tailpipe emissions. I would like to add that the zero emissions technology can be electric, it could be hydrogen fuel cell, anything that emits zero tailpipe emissions would help us reach our ultimate goals. The one other thing I'll say is that we've had some state agencies that are taking the lead on this. It was in a budget presentation today where an agency is looking at vehicle replacements and has already decided one is going to be an electric vehicle, another will be a hybrid because that fits their use case. So agencies are already starting to look at these issues. In addition, our State Department of Administration did conduct an analysis and found that overall, particularly for light-duty vehicles, they are today already cost-effective purchases over the life of the vehicle. So even putting aside the air pollution, health, and other benefits, they just make economic sense. And that, I think, is before we factor in some of these new federal incentives that are available to help lower the upfront purchase costs even further. So again, the goal is to help codify some of this into practice and set a clear path and direction for our state to lead by example in transitioning to zero emission vehicles, helping support our local clean technology and transportation economy in the process. And with that, I would be glad to stand for any questions that members of the committee may have.
Thank you for the presentation. We do have a few members with questions. We're going to go ahead and start with Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And so, obviously, I think this is a good path. It's what we are looking to for the state. But my question was in Section 4A, to the extent practicable, give preference to the purchase of automobiles which minimize. So, and then there's the list of everything that to be taken into account. So if for some reason, and I think we have federal rebates, we have so many good things going on now, but if for some reason there was some particular vehicle that couldn't fit all of these, does the agency still have the authority to go purchase something else if for some reason we don't get enough incentives, it's a special truck and it's a $40,000 difference? Can they still buy a traditional truck if it is calculated that that is what is needed at the time?
Thank you very much for that question, Assemblywoman. Howard Watts for the record. It's a great question, and yes, that is how this is designed, is to provide that flexibility. And with practicable, as I see it, it is both financially practical, but also logistically. So sometimes, the charging or other infrastructure may be an issue. So figuring out, and again, also the use cases. As some of this technology continues to develop, the range and the fueling availability may be an issue. So again, right now, there might be some things that are better suited for a hybrid technology at this point in time, and then maybe looking at doing a full zero emissions a little bit further down the road. And again, if we look at setting a goal of 2040 with our vehicle fleets, I mean, that's still, with the amount of turnover that we have in our vehicle fleets and the speed at which this technology is deploying, I think that we're well on our way to meet that goal. But yes, so some of those specialty vehicles, particularly those heavy duty vehicles, are either not available or are not with our current policies, although there's a policy for that too, that is under consideration. They might not be financially or logistically feasible at this time. Absolutely, they can go in the direction of what makes sense now. This just encourages a constant evaluation of what's out there, so that as some of those dynamics shift and some of these newer technologies and options become cost competitive and become logistically practical, that we move in that direction.
Great, thank you. I like the path, just it's good to hear there's flexibility if it's needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, Chairman Watts, for the presentation. I like it. I think it's a great idea, but one of the things I am wondering, if there are policies, departmental policies, that take into consideration right sizing of vehicles. And one of the things that I noticed in my 26 years working in public service is that, for instance, I would see a lot of trucks, 150s and above, on the road doing work in urban communities that did not necessarily require off-road. And so now you're using a vehicle that is expending way more fuel and expending way more pollution than it should, when it could have been done by a smaller vehicle. And so I'm wondering if there's any room, or if you have any idea about how we can add or strongly suggest a review of right sizing. Just because we work in a construction industry, we don't necessarily need a truck. So something to consider.
Thank you for that. Howard Watts for the record. I appreciate that. And again, not knowing the details of the needs that each agency has for each different vehicle use, it's a little bit tricky. What I can say is, when I first came up with the idea for this policy, I was really thinking about fuel sources and comparable vehicles with different fuel sources. However, looking back at this, in terms of, to the extent practicable, minimizing emissions from the automobile and total costs over a lifetime, if you move to a smaller, more efficient vehicle from a pickup truck, that is going to lower the emissions, and it's going to lower the cost of that vehicle for fuel. And so I think, based on your question, this would help encourage people to make sure that they are right-sized to the most efficient model possible to meet the needs associated with it.
Thank you. Members, anyone else with questions? Char Watts, I do have two, and I'm just curious to know if you would speak to. On page 3, item 5, each department, office, bureau, officer, or employee shall maintain records. I'm curious to know if you could talk us through a little bit about what does that look like, each individual state division, or would this data be collected somewhere and then reported out? And then to who would we report it to?
Thank you for that question, Vice Chair. Howard Watts for the record. So again, we're trying to create some flexibility, but also trying to create some transparency and some accountability about what we're doing and where we're heading. The state has actually already entered into a contract. It was approved by the Interim Finance Committee to track some of its climate-related pollution emissions. And fleet services is one of the things that's going to be tracked from. So in order to do that, they're also going to be looking at the fuel source and other information about vehicles within the fleet. So really, what that subsection, as well as the very last portion of addition to the bill, we're having fleet services maintain records, and so the goal is that they would be able to maintain some records on what the makeup is, because they would have that historically, hopefully able to be easily pulled and analyzed. We can see, again, where are we at? What's the progress that we're making as time goes by? We can compare that against the goals that we aim to move towards, and potentially ask questions and investigate how that's going, what are the barriers, what are the opportunities to continue to make progress towards those goals. And so that's really kind of the what we envision. But Fleet Services and the Department of Administration, it is not the sole owner of vehicles. Agencies also own their own vehicles, particularly in the Department of Transportation. So that subsection 5 is really trying to make sure that we can get towards something holistic across all of state government, all of the vehicles that we own, to understand what's the breakdown of the makeup.
Thank you for that. Members, anyone else? Seeing none, then thank you for your presentation. We will go ahead and hear testimony in support, opposition, and neutral of Assembly Bill 262. Please remember to clearly state and spell your name and limit your testimony to 2 minutes. Staff will be timing each speaker. Anyone who is here in support of Assembly Bill 262, please come forward.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Christy Cabrera-Georgeson, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Nevada Conservation League. This bill will encourage state agencies to add more electric and hybrid vehicles to their fleets, which will reduce emissions and toxic pollution, all while improving public health and saving the state money. Gas-powered vehicles produce many pollutants, including particulate matter, ozone, and carbon monoxide. These tailpipe emissions are damaging to our health and are linked to many respiratory illnesses, including asthma. Additionally, transportation continues to be the top contributor to carbon pollution in our state. By getting more EVs on our roads, we can take a major step to clean up our air. A recent report found that a 2% increase in EVs on the road can lead to a 3.2% decline in asthma-related emergency department visits. Electric vehicles also cost less to operate, as they don't have any expenses for oil changes or smog checks. This makes the total cost of owning an EV much less. A recent analysis of Nevada's fleets found that the state could save money by electrifying. Getting more EVs in our state fleets is good for public health, good for our planet, and good for our wallet. We urge the committee support. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and committee members. My name is Donna Laffey, D-O-N-N-A-L-A-F-F-E-Y, with Ferrari Reader Public Affairs, representing the Biotechnology Innovation Organization. Bio has supported efforts to increase the use of ethanol and biodiesel in motor fuel, most recently supporting AB 411 from the 2021 session. Ethanol has been shown to emit about 46% less greenhouse gas emissions, and that's more than conventional gasoline. So we urge the committee to support AB 262, and we thank the bill sponsor for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Angie Dykema, ANGIE DYKEMA, and I'm the Nevada representative of the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project. And we are in full support of this bill for all the reasons already stated. So just urge you to please move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Kyle Davis. Today, on behalf of Western Resource Advocates, there's a letter on Nellis detailing our support, so I won't go into it any further. It's a good bill. We urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in Carson City in support of Assembly Bill 262? Seeing none, we'll go down to Las Vegas. Anyone in Las Vegas? No one there. BPS, would you check on the phone lines to see if there's anyone in support?
To testify in support of AB 262, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chair Watts, Vice Chair Brown May, and honorable members of the committee. My name is Will Dreyer, and I'm a policy manager speaking on behalf of the Electrification Coalition in support of AB 262. We submitted a letter of support and a analysis of the Nevada fleet that I will point your direction to and keep this short. But we know that EVs are generally cheaper to own and operate over the lifetime of the vehicle, and are a major barrier of adoption is their upfront costs. AB 262 would encourage agencies to use the total cost of ownership rather than purchase price when making procurement decisions. I encourage you to review the analysis submitted, which we conducted on a portion of the Department of Administration's fleet, which showed that 92% of the vehicles we analyzed would create a savings for the state by shifting to electrification today, prior to any incentives or rebates. For these reasons, we support AB 262. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment, and please feel free to reach out with any questions regarding our analysis.
Thank you. BPS, next caller, please.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Brown May and committee members. For the record, my name is Matilda Guerrero. That's MATHILDA GUERRERO, and I'm calling on behalf of Battleborn Progress, and we are in unwavering support of Assembly Bill 262. Just wanted to ditto the previous statements made already, as we're already living through the effects of the climate crisis. As Nevada makes plans to fight the climate crisis, this body must consider creative solutions such as this bill that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions and make the necessary strides to one day zero emissions. This bill is one of the necessary steps to ensure that Nevadans today and future generations are able to thrive in their state. And we urge this committee to vote yes on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. BPS, next caller.
Good afternoon, Chair Watts, Vice Chair Brown May, and members of the committee. My name is Gabriela Olmedo, OLMEDO. I'm an associate at Advanced Energy United, a clean energy business association working to make the energy we use clean, affordable, and reliable. We represent over 100 companies across the clean energy spectrum, including electric vehicle manufacturers, fleet operators, and charging infrastructure providers. I'm calling in to express support for AB 262. Total cost of ownership analysis is the most fiscally responsible approach to state vehicle procurement and would be an excellent move to allow the state to make sound long-term investments that benefit the state well into the future. This approach will ensure that Nevada procures vehicles that are most affordable over their lifetimes, which can result in significant savings for the state and for taxpayers, and free up money for other state priorities. Electric vehicles often offer considerable operational, maintenance, and fuel savings, as we heard. Fuel costs for EVs are just a fraction of what they are for equivalent gas-powered vehicles, and maintenance costs are 3 times lower than that of gas vehicles. If their procurement would save the state money over the course of their operational lifetime, they should be evaluated accordingly. Thank you to the bill sponsor for bringing this forward, and thank you to the committee for your consideration.
Thank you. BPS, next caller.
There are no more callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you. Next, we'll move into testimony in opposition. If there is anyone here in opposition to Assembly Bill 262, please come forward in Carson City. Seeing none, anyone in opposition in Las Vegas? None in Las Vegas. BPS, is there anyone in opposition on our telephone lines?
There are no callers at this time, Chair.
Thank you, BPS. Let's move into neutral. Is anyone here to testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 262 here in Carson City? No movement in Carson City. In Las Vegas? No one in Las Vegas. BPS, is there anyone in neutral on the telephone line?
There are no callers, Chair.
Thank you. So at this time, I will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 260. Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like to provide wrap-up comments? I apologize, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Again, for the record, Howard Watts. Appreciate the time, the consideration, and the questions today, and would ask for your support in moving this bill forward as soon as practicable. Thank you.
Thank you. On this Pi Day, as we keep it rolling, I am now happy to close the bill hearing on Assembly Bill 262 and hand the gavel back to our chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. All right, members, with that, we will move into our first work session of the legislative session for this committee. I will turn things over to our policy analyst, Mr. Stinisbeck, to walk us through our work session document. And I will begin by opening the work session on Assembly Bill number 2. Mr. Stinisbeck, whenever you are ready, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, Jan Stinisbeck with the Research Division of the LCB. As nonpartisan Senate staff, I cannot advocate for or against any measure that comes before this body. With that being said, Assembly Bill 2 was sponsored by this committee on behalf of the City of Sparks, heard on February 14th, and authorizes a vehicle used by a local government agency for the construction, maintenance, or repair of highways, or a vehicle owned or operated by a person who contracts with a local government agency to aid motorists or mitigate traffic incidents, to be equipped with lamps located towards the rear of the vehicle that emit non-flashing blue light. The bill further authorize the use of such blue tail lamps under certain circumstances. And lastly, the bill requires the driver of a vehicle to take precautions when approaching such a vehicle that is making use of its blue tail lamps. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stinisbeck. Members, are there any questions? Okay, I've got a motion to do pass by Assemblywoman Dickman. Do I have a second? Second. Wow. We'll go with Assemblyman Miller on that. So I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Dickman. Next bill we have on our work session today is Assembly Bill 47. Mr. Stinisbeck, whenever you're ready.
Assembly Bill 47 was sponsored by this committee on behalf of the Nevada Association of Counties. It was heard in this committee on February 16th. And the bill provides a governmental entity is not prohibited from constructing, operating, or maintaining a trail for use by off-highway vehicles that is adjacent to or near a highway, including without limitations a paved highway. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions on Assembly Bill 47? Okay, seeing none, I would take a motion to do pass.
So moved.
I've got a motion from Vice Chair Brown-May. Do I have a second? All right, I think I heard a second from Assemblyman Gurr. I'll take that. Members, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I will assign that floor statement to Vice Chair Brown-May.
Thank you, Chair.
Next up on our work session is Assembly Bill number 56. Mr. Strinsbeck, whenever you're ready.
Assembly Bill 56 was sponsored by this committee on behalf of the Department of Transportation and heard on February 14th. It authorizes certain vehicles to overtake and pass upon the right of another vehicle under circumstances by driving for more than 200 feet on the paved right shoulder of a highway where lawfully placed signage allows the vehicle to use the shoulder in that manner. The bill prohibits the driver upon the immediate approach of an authorized emergency vehicle or official vehicle of a regulatory agency making use of certain flashing lights from driving to and stopping on the paved right shoulder of a highway where lawfully placed signage allows such vehicles to drive on the shoulder. The bill also authorizes such vehicles to drive on a paved shoulder on a controlled access highway where lawfully placed signage allows the vehicle to use the shoulder in that manner. And there was one proposed amendment to this bill. It is an attached mock-up to the work session document here proposed by the Department of Transportation. It first removes the term curb of a highway, removes the word right when describing the shoulder of a highway, which may be used to overtake and pass in a manner authorized by the bill, clarifies what constitutes a hazardous material vehicle as the coroner vehicles and hazardous material vehicles to the list of vehicles authorized to overtake and pass on the right in the manner authorized by the bill, and replaces the term accident with traffic incident and changes the effective date. And again, you can find that the full mock-up amendment attached. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Strinsbeck. Before we move forward, members, I just want to make sure that everyone's aware. So during the presentation on this bill, there was substantial talk about the effective date and having time for the department to educate the community about the changes that would be enacted under this bill. So instead of being effective upon passage and approval as was included in the original bill, this allows the ability to adopt regulations and perform any other preparation associated with the implementation of this upon passage and approval, and creates a new effective date for the provisions of January 1st, 2024, providing some certainty with the window for public education. I think I will just make sure that we put on the record that members would like to have some additional clarity from the department on its plans to conduct that public education so that folks are aware before there's any potential enforcement of the provisions of this going into effect. So with that, members, are there additional questions on Assembly Bill 56? Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the removal of the word right as it pertains to shoulder in the proposed amendment, I guess I'm confused now if we can move the traffic in the left shoulder or the right shoulder. I just don't understand. I need clarity. Like, why do we need to have a designation for right shoulder if it can be either shoulder?
We'll have somebody from the Department of Transportation come up to provide some clarity on that. My understanding is that there may be certain circumstances in which only limiting this language to the right shoulder could limit its appropriate implementation. Sir, welcome. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Great question, and for the record, Rod Schelling, Chief Traffic Operations Engineer for the Department of Transportation. That is correct. So we don't know the right and left as to what issues may be out there that we need to address, so that's why we want the option to be able to use both the right and left shoulder in this instance.
Thank you for that. And just to provide some additional, again, given some of the conversations that happened when the bill was heard, your plan is to provide clear signage and guidance about related to the implementation of the provisions of this bill, as well as to conduct public education so that when these circumstances come into play, people are aware of them. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, Rod Schilling, for the record, that is totally correct. That's why we're allowing this time period for us to establish all of those procedures and everything else to put that lawfully signage out there for that.
I would like to talk to you offline, if you don't mind, about this bill, because I'm just confused now. If a incident happens and you can direct traffic to either side, then what would your messaging to the public be? Would it be to stay in their lane and not to move? What is now the new direction that you would be sending the general public into? Because, you know, I'm 50 a whole bunch, and we've always been told to move to the right. So what would the new direction be, and would that also be now part of DMV instruction as far as training for new drivers and people getting their licenses renewed?
Great question, Assemblywoman. For the record, again, Rod Schilling for the Department of Transportation. Absolutely. So that's why we want to be able to look at both the inside and outside shoulders and then come up with that, which is similar to the DMV. We did the same very much process for the HOV lanes. You know, we had to educate and then update the HOV. Part of that instructions in the DMV manual. So it'd be very similar. And I'd be happy to sit with you and go over some of that.
Thank you very much. And again, these are great questions. I do want to make sure to encourage members to engage with either me as the chair and or folks bringing forward bills as soon as possible to discuss some of these items. Again, I think these are fine as clarifying questions, but we do want to make sure that we don't rehear the bill during our work session. So with that, Assemblywoman Miller, did you have? Okay, well, yeah, we'll hold off on that. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 56.
So moved.
Got a motion from Vice Chair Brown May. Second? Second from Assemblywoman Dickman. Discussion on the motion. Assemblywoman Miller.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak, and also thank you. I do appreciate some of the changes that have been made in here, especially like terminology from accident to traffic incident, because that's more inclusive of issues and scenarios that happen on the roads. But I still remain concerned with the amount of public education that will be out, because again, my concern is just people just generally not knowing and being pulled over and ticketed for things that they just truly weren't aware of. So I will vote it out of committee, but would like to talk to you further to make sure that, and reserve my right to change on the floor.
Thank you. Members, any additional discussion on this motion?
Thank you, Chair. The same.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman C.H. Miller. With that, we'll move on to the last bill on our work session for today, which is Assembly Bill 57. Mr. Sinisbeck, whenever you're ready.
Assembly Bill 57 was sponsored by this committee on behalf of the Department of Motor Vehicles and heard on February 16th. It authorized certain persons who have a statutory lien on certain property, including a motor vehicle, motorcycle, motor equipment, trailer, mobile home, or manufactured home, or any part or parts thereof, in connection with the provisions of certain goods or services to satisfy a lien by selling the property by private sale in an arm's length transaction under certain circumstances. The bill further requires every aspect of a sale held to satisfy such a lien to be commercially reasonable, regardless of whether the sale is held by public auction or private sale. The bill authorizes the advertisement of a sale to be published in the publication of a national recognized media outlet made available on the internet instead of in a newspaper The bill revises the date by which the Director of the Department of Motor Vehicle is required to submit the annual report concerning garages, garage operators, and body shops to be on or before February 1st of each year. Further revises outdated references to certain standing committees of the legislature related to transportation and energy to instead refer to the Senate and Assembly committees on growth and infrastructure. And lastly, the bill repeals provisions relating to special license plates issued to honorary consuls of foreign countries. There is one proposed amendment to this bill. The attached markup amendment proposed by DMV requires a sale at a public auction held to satisfy a lien to be made at fair market value, requires private sale to satisfy a lien to be made directly to a third-party purchaser, limits the applicability of the bill language related to private sales, to remove the language related to aircraft, mobile homes, and manufactured homes, removes the authorization to advertise a lien sale in certain publications made available on the internet instead of in a newspaper, and lastly, it defines terms like fair market value, public auction, and arm's length transaction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any questions on Assembly Bill 57? Seeing none, I'd accept a motion to amend and do pass. I've got a motion from Assemblywoman Peters. Do I have a second? Second from Assemblywoman Miller. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Motion carries. And I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. All right. Thank you, members. That concludes our first work session and most of our business for the day. The last item on our agenda is public comment. Again, anyone wishing to provide public comment will ask to limit their remarks to 2 minutes or less, and please clearly state and spell your name before beginning. Anyone wishing to provide public comment in Carson City or in Las Vegas, please do come forward. Seeing none, Broadcast Production Services, do we have anyone wishing to provide public comment by phone?
Chair, there are no callers at this time.
Thank you. I think we had a very productive meeting. We will have our next meeting on Thursday, March 16th at 1:30 p.m. Thank you for your time. We are adjourned.